Do you have memory of Lynn?
I do have some memories, but as is usual, it's kind of the traumatic things that happen. You don't remember every day, but I can remember we had a screened in porch, which in the winter was windowed in. But my brother Thurlow was on a tricycle riding back and forth on this porch. And there was a door at the end of the porch that led outside. And I don't know why he did it or how, I'm not sure he even knew how he did it. But he rode to the end where the door was, and he hit the door and the door opened. And he fell down the stairs. And the handlebar struck him in the eye. And I was petrified. And they came and took him away in an ambulance. And I thought for sure he was going to die. I was so scared. And I mean, he wasn't hurt that
How old
bad.
were you guys here? Do you?
Uh, he was probably, he might have been 5 or 6, and I was 4 maybe. Well, no, it would had to have been younger because we moved to Maine when I was 4, not quite 5. So, and it wasn't too long before that. But I think what I remember most is stories that people tell. I can remember hearing stories how probably my brother Jess most because he was so goofy. But they wanted to teach Thurlow and I how to say refrigerator, only they called it a shitterator. I mean, the stupid things they would do. And I was the baby of 6. And I can remember moving to Maine only because I was so excited because I knew that's where my dad grew up, you know. And I just, my dad was I mean, he was everything to me. And it was really cool because the house that they bought had a huge pond behind it, which was, oh, it created so many fun memories, especially from the winter when we could skate on it. Although Thurlow and I made some pretty cool rafts that we floated on in the summer and caught the same hornpout probably 73 times each. Threw them back in, but it was a great place to grow up. It really was. And of course, there's 23 years difference between me and my oldest brother Bob. And so really, like I was 3 years old when he got married and he was gone. And I don't remember a lot of Jess being around, but when we moved to Maine, he didn't live with us. So I don't know where he lived. I can't remember. But my sister Carol and I shared a bedroom, which she hated because she said I kicked and hit her all night long. And
So you guys not only shared a bedroom, you shared a bed.
yeah, yeah, right. So, and then she eventually moved into Portland because she was working in Portland. Not that it was that far, it was only like 18 miles, but it was easier for her to be in Portland. So, and then my sister Mary Jane, she and I got really close. She was the one that told me all the facts of life and stuff that
What's the year spread between you and Aunt Mary Jane?
16 years. 16 years. And Mary, your Aunt Mary Jane used to tell me later, she said, you should feel lucky. She said, I didn't get any of that from Mom. She said, at least you got somebody that could talk to you. But she and I had a lot of fun together. We used to, when of course she was married and divorced and had 3 really adorable little girls, and we used to go down to camp, my folks' camp down on Casco Bay, would take the girls and go for the weekend. We used to have so much fun. And of course, this story has been told so many times, but it had been snowing out, but she and I decided to go to Andy's, which was a local hangout for, it was, like a bar, but there was a place to dance, and there were always sailors around, so we decided to go over there. We had a good time, and on the way back home, we were in my 56 Chevy, and just before getting to our house, coming from Brunswick, you had to go up this hill. It was fairly, fairly good grade. Well, there was ice on the road, and I ended up going off into the snowbank, but not in it. I was on top of it, so I couldn't go forward or backwards. So we ran across the street to these folks that we knew and said, could we use your phone? And mind you, Mary Jane is 15 years older than Thurlow. But Thurlow came to the rescue for his sisters, and the first words out of his mouth was, have you two been drinking? And Mary Jane just started laughing so hard. And of course, that made him really angry. But he got us off the snowdrift really quickly. But it's been a joke over the years about how funny it was that this kid brother of Mary Jane's said, have you been drinking? So, and we probably had, but yeah, but it was silly things I remember about, different things that went on. And with my brother Bob being gone so much, I never really felt like I knew him until I was an adult, because, well, he was just so much older and everything. And my brother Jess, I never got really close to, but he was kind of ornery about some things. Yeah, I can remember one of his favorite things. If I was out near him, if we were outside, he was doing something, and I bugged him, he'd say, oh, go brush your teeth. I don't know why he said brush your teeth, but he was just trying to get rid of me. And he did get in trouble one day, though, because he was out washing the car, and I went out there, and he picked up the pail and threw the water at me. And my mother was very angry at him. I was, yay, somebody got him. So, and Aunt Carol and I mean, of course, she was around a lot when she was 10 years older than I was. So I can remember, though, I was 8 years old when she graduated from high school, and I thought, wow, she's so old. Yeah. But she's always been there for me, and her being the only one left now, that makes that relationship pretty more special now, But I think I've told you and Carrie for years, I really had the Leave It to Beaver type growing up. It was just such a, I really feel like it was idyllic. I mean, we could have had a TV show about the Dunning family. But I feel very blessed to have grown up in that family and experienced all the things that I did. And I've had so many good times since then, and a lot of that comes from my kids and my husband.
So what, you and Uncle Thurlow were super close in age. What was your dynamic like growing up?
Well, he used to throw knives at me.
See, that's not very Leave It to Beaver-ish.
No, it isn't. But, I mean, we used to do the silliest things. Like, I don't know who came up with the idea, but all of all of the doors in our house were typical old doors, and they had doorknobs on each side. And we would open the door a little bit, and I don't know whether we'd get on a chair or whatever, but we'd stand on the doorknobs, hang on to the top of the door, and just swing back and forth. I mean, talk about, you can do anything and make it fun. But he was notorious for, he would never hit me. I mean, my father would have killed him if he had ever hit me. You just don't hit girls. But the doors in our house had like panels, like a lot of doors do, and I'm not sure that there are any that don't have a crack in them from where he hit the door instead of hitting me. But the day he left to go to college, I was so distraught. And your grandmother thought that was so funny because she said, "You fought for all these years and now you're going to cry because he's going?" And I really did miss him. And he and I got really, really close. And losing him at such a young age, he was only 54, that was so tragic for me. So we had just gotten to the point where, I mean, he and Aunt Marty and your dad and I used to try to get together, and we had just gotten to the point where we had decided, okay, no more than once a month. I mean, we had to do it at least once a month, maybe more, but we said we would get together and go out to dinner. And I can remember it was just so fun as being adults, getting together like that. But I did really miss him when he went to college. So, but I've had a really good life. Great, great, great family. On both sides, really. I've been blessed that I had a wonderful mother-in-law, too. So,
What are your fondest memories of your mom and your dad?
oh,
Obviously, there's probably a bunch, but
there are a bunch, but it's funny, as I was getting older, like my mother was almost 40 when I was born, so she was a lot older. And when I got to be 40, I would look at you kids and think, how would my mother have done these things, at that age? And things, as I got even older, it would make me stop and think about, did my mother get upset like this with us kids? I don't remember her getting upset, but some of the things she did for me were unbelievable. Like, I can remember there was a teacher in high school. His name was Jim Lumsden. And I took a class from him called Problems of Democracy. And at that time, you not only got a letter grade, but you got a numbered grade beside it, which meant you were trying, how hard you were trying, were you applying it, and it went from 1 to 5. And I can remember I came home with I can't remember whether it was a B or a C, but I didn't have a good number grade. Well, my mother marched herself right down to the high school and decided she'd talk with him. And, she's doing okay. She can, it had to have been a B because I don't think she would have fought it with a C. But, she's doing fine. She knows what she's doing in this class. And you give her, he said, that's because I know she could be an A student. But I mean, she would fight for things, you know. I never thought about that until you kids were older, and you know, what would I fight for my kids? And thankfully, both of you kids were really good students and applied yourself pretty well. But with my dad, he and my mom just, I don't think I ever saw a day go by where I didn't see them giving each other a kiss. I always knew how much they loved each other. And Dad's bark could be worse than his bite. I can remember he scolded me one time when I was probably 7 or 8, and he scolded me. I mean, he just spoke to me, but he was angry at me, and that really upset me. And one time I remember your grandmother coming. I was standing in a corner in the dining room, and she came in and she said, "Alice, it's okay. His bark is worse than his bite." I don't know why I remember that, but they were really good parents. They weren't such hands-on like parents are now, I think, and it had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that in that era, kids were to be seen and not heard. You know, I mean, it was just a whole different era that they were the parents and you were the children, and you had to do what they said. And I never thought anything about it. I mean, they told you to do the dishes, you did the dishes without even thinking, you know. But your grandmother could be dangerous at the sink. Your father would tell you this story. Your Aunt Carol was the first one I knew that she did this to. She had a boyfriend at the time named Phil, and he was sitting in the kitchen, and your grandmother was washing dishes and Aunt Carol was wiping them. And this guy made several comments, and she said, "You keep it up and you're going to get this sponge right in your face." And he just kind of laughed, and a minute or so later he said something, and all of a sudden, splat, that soapy sponge went right on his chest. And then years later, your father was sitting in the kitchen and basically was doing the same thing. He was teasing her about something, and she said, "You're gonna get it." Well, your father laughs, of course, and he got that soapy wet sponge right on his chest. So he learned his lesson really fast. But one thing I remember, I was so scared. It was in the winter, and the pond was frozen really good, and we had friends over skating and everything. And that was one that your grandmother always kept this huge blue spotted enamel pot full of hot chocolate on the back of the stove. I mean, it was there almost all winter, so that when the kids got done skating, they could have a cup of hot chocolate. But this one day, your grandfather decided to come down skating, and I mean, he could skate well, but a sister of my girlfriend, Faith, her name was Carol, somehow she was skating around the back of my father, and she clipped his skate, and he went flat on his butt. And I could just see, I mean, you could tell how much it hurt him. He could barely get back up the bank to get in the house, but your grandmother told me later, he said, "Okay, remind me that I should never be on skates again." But we had a lot of fun on that pond. We really did. Dad would sometimes light a bonfire he'd put tires out there because they'd burn a long time. We just had so much fun on pond. One year, there was a creek that was flowing, and it would just glide over these rocks and everything. Well, one year it froze really solid. So Thurlow and I would walk up the road, put our skates on, and we could just stand and we could glide all the way down to the pond. And that was really fun. I don't remember any other year that it happened, but because it usually doesn't freeze that solid. There's always, with the moving stream, there's always some open, but that year it was just frozen solid. So it was fun. Mom and Dad didn't try to keep us entertained, but they provided very well. Yeah, they were good.